Welcome to the very first episode of Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff. Off the cuff and candid conversations about the big topics in the world. These are big conversations, deep discussions, deep topics such as philosophy, spirituality, mental health, personal development, and also political and social issues in the world. But I'd want to focus on maybe issues that aren't covered in other media outlets as much or aren't talked about that much in the media. And also, a majority of these podcast episodes I will have a guest. I'm doing a solo episode for this starter episode to just kind of give an introduction, and I will do other solo episodes as well. But I used to host it. I'm Sean Neese. It's a Neese, silent K, K-N-E-E-S-E, or you can call me Sean K if that's easier to remember. I am the host of this podcast, and for a while, for 10 years, I was hosting another podcast called BSing with Sean K. It was a little bit more of a variety show, but I talked to people from all different backgrounds and walks of life about their creative and intellectual passions. And I enjoyed doing that show, but eventually my spirit for it kind of died. And I wanted to do something a little more focused and a little more niche. And I think that just deep conversations about deep topics is a little bit more focused. But today, for the first episode, I'm going to read a quote that from Neville Goddard. Neville Goddard he was kind of the precursor to a lot of the law of attraction things. He talked about using your mind and your imagination to create the reality and the life you want. The quote I wanted to read says, "Change your conception of yourself, and you will automatically change the world in which you live. Do not try to change people. They are only messengers telling you who you are. Revalue yourself, and they will confirm the change." Now, the reason I'm reading that quote is because that's the main topic I want to talk about today, is being centered within yourself and having your own inner foundation that isn't affected by what happens in the external world or what other people think of you or whether people like you. And I think a lot of people are focused on finding happiness. And I think that happiness is something that's fleeting and isn't ever permanent. No matter what, I don't think anybody can feel happy all the time, especially as someone who struggles with depression. Happiness is not really a long-lasting goal. I think that living a life that's meaningful and living a life that serves others. Now, I mean, I guess that's kind of contradicting what I said that you want to have a strong inner life but I think you want to have something that's your unique gift to give. And I think that what I've been doing with the podcasting and giving people a voice, like I did in my last show, I gave a lot of voice to a lot of perspectives and people that didn't usually get a voice. And I think that when I do that, or I do some other kind of creative project, like I've done writing in the past, acting in the past, and I do music a bit too. It's kind of getting in touch with that higher creator self, which is something also that Neville Goddard talks about, and kind of giving something beyond yourself. And happiness, I think, comes and goes, but I think meaning is something more long-lasting. So living a life that's meaningful and having that inner core that isn't changed by whether somebody likes you or whether, you have this or that, and also not external thing, because you put your happiness in external, you let your happiness be dependent on external circumstances. You're never going to be fully satisfied. Now, my mind kind of goes between two extremes. It's either I'm shit, I'm worthless, why do I even fucking exist, to being like, oh, I'm this great guy, I love myself, I'm so wonderful, I'm changing the world. I think that happiness lies in between the extreme highs and the extreme lows. Because I think when you're in extreme, highly good mood, and you're like, oh, everything's great. Yeah, it's wonderful. I'm on my path. That shit's going to crash hard. Now, of course, then, if you're in extreme low mood, nowhere to go but up. Unfortunately, I've been in a bit of a rut where my depression's just been kicking my ass because of I just have been feeling kind of dead inside, and it's A lot of things have been good in my life, actually, and that's why people who say depression, oh, why are you depressed? You got all this good stuff. Like, that's not how depression works. Depression is more like, it's not about the external. And also, many people don't know, it's also a chemical imbalance in the brain. It's more, how you feel about yourself, how you feel about, like, if you feel like there's meaning in your life, if you feel like if you feel like connected to other people, if you feel there's a lot of it. It's just a filter. Like, you see the world. It's like the opposite of rose-tinted glasses. It's not really has anything to do with, like, oh, you look at all this, and these people been through this, and then they're not depressed. It's like, I don't think anybody that struggles with depression is thinking, I have the worst life in the world. I'm going to sign up for the Guinness Book of World Record because of the worst life in the world. I think depression for me is like a disconnection to my soul and my life energy, and it's not really about, like, I know objectively I have a lot of things to be grateful for, so when people say, oh, you don't look at what you have, you don't look at what other people have, it's like, that's not how fucking depression works. And it doesn't help, because you're just invalidating what I feel. I am feeling this disconnectedness. I'm feeling this loneliness. I'm feeling this emptiness. And when someone has depression, just telling them, oh, you should be grateful for this and that, you should be happy, well, they fucking don't feel happy. And sometimes it's okay to not be okay. Not everybody has to be like, so, if you want to be there for someone, there's another author I like a lot. He wrote Nonviolent Communication. He wrote about how empathy is different from sympathy. Okay, Marshall Rosenberg said, empathy is respectful understanding of what others are experiencing. Instead of offering empathy, we often have a strong urge to give advice or reassurance and to explain our own position or feeling. Empathy, however, calls upon us to empty our mind and listen to others with our whole being. And that's something I like doing with when I did the last podcast. I might get back into BSing at some point, but I kind of wanted to do this more show that was, I didn't really have a real goal with my last show, and this is more like I have different topics I want to cover, like rare perspectives that people don't know about, rare, like maybe different religious beliefs that a lot of people aren't familiar with, or certain like political positions that maybe are more obscure, or just I want to put a lot of unusual perspectives out there, and like a varied, like have one person who believes like is an evangelical one episode, then one person who's an atheist the next, or someone who believes something like more obscure in the next one. I like putting different views out there that maybe people aren't familiar with, and also like people from different cultures, different backgrounds, like I did in the last show. But like I said, this is more focused, more niche, like deep conversations about deep topics. The last one was more of a variety show, which I might get back into a bit, but this is my main project for now. But anyway, like that's what I was saying. Like when someone's depressed, just being like, oh, why don't you be grateful? Why don't you just do this? What do you have to be depressed about? Like, first of all, that's not how depression works. Because it's an illness. It's an illness. It's like someone has a cold. You're not gonna go tell someone with a cold like, hey, why don't you stop sneezing, man? That's like saying like, oh, like, you're sick with the flu. Why do you keep throwing up all the time? Like, I'm gonna read a quote from Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. Khalil Gibran was a Lebanese American writer, poet, and visual artist, and he's one of my favorite spiritual authors. Probably Rumi is my other, and Alan Watts. I love the Rumi's writing as well. And anyway, this is from The Prophet. He says, your joy is your sorrow unmasked. And the same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you contain. Is not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that was once burned in the potter's oven? Is not the lute that soothes your spirit the very wood that was hauled with knives? When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find it is only that which has given you sorrow which has given you joy. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you'll see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Some of you say, joy is greater than sorrow. Others say, nay, sorrow is the greater. But I say unto you, they are inseparable. Together they come when one sits alone with you at your board. Remember that the other is asleep upon your bed. Verily, you are suspended like scales between your sorrow and your joy. Only when you are empty are you at a standstill and balanced. I love that part, and that relates so much to what I said about the happiness and meaning. Happiness being between the extreme highs and lows, and also meaning being more everlasting than happiness. But anyway, finishing up. When the treasure keeper lifts you to weigh his gold and his silver, needs must your joy and your sorrow rise or fall. I love that. And I think that relates so much to, I think that's been the source of a lot of, like I said, I struggle with depression, but I think a lot of it has been looking too much for validation in other people, or validation in whether this person likes me, or they're going to tell me I'm okay, or they're going to think I'm cool, or they're going to, and potentially, I would say I did that more so with the opposite sex, and just looking for that validation that you're okay, Sean, you're a good person, Sean, and you keep looking for that, for someone like, am I really okay? And they're like, yes, Sean, you're okay. Am I really okay? Well, yeah, I guess you're okay, Sean. No, am I really okay? I fucking said you're okay, Sean. Really, am I okay? No, fuck you, Sean. Get lost. You're not okay. See, you keep seeking it. You're never satisfied. You keep seeking it. You keep seeking the validation. You keep seeking the, oh, you're okay. You keep saying, hey, you keep looking for that from people, that validation, that external validation. You're never going to be satisfied. You're always going to be looking for the next like on your Instagram, the next I love you, the next, oh, yeah, I'm going to kiss you, or like the next, like whatever it is, the next, like, I'm going to bake you a birthday cake, the next, like whatever it is, and the never be satisfied because you feel empty inside, and there's the emptiness inside, and that's what you got to fill. That's what I am learning to fill, is that inner being. It doesn't matter what the hell is happening on the external world, what this person thinks of me, because if you have meaning in your life, if you have a mission you're on, if you have something in your life that's valuable, that you're doing, that you're putting out there, that's helping you give value to other people's lives, it doesn't fucking matter about any of that other shit, because you got your meaning, you're on your purpose, and none of that other shit matters, man. That's just like the weather outside. Life's going on, but like sometimes it rains, sometimes it shines, but I'm trying to think of a good metaphor of like what's going on despite it. It's like the ocean, right? Actually, well, now oceans change with the weather, because then there's like a big tidal wave and it kills a whole bunch of people in a tsunami, and then there's whatever. But I'm not sure exactly what to phrase as far as that goes. Maybe Yoda in Star Wars, despite whatever is going on, at least in the original trilogy, in the prequel trilogy, I feel like Yoda got more aggressive, and they made him very aggressive. And Grogu actually is probably better. The baby Yoda in The Mandalorian, he keeps his inner like cuteness, like baby Mandalorian guy, despite whatever's happening outside. He has this inner peace. And one Yoda too, I guess, because he was kind of a Zen master. But I was saying before that my thoughts about myself go between I'm shit, or I'm this great guy. But really, if you analyze it, none of those have any basis in reality, because those are just thoughts in my head or thoughts in somebody else's head. I mean, somebody could say Sean Kay is a great guy, somebody could say Sean Kay is an asshole, but neither one of those is true. I mean, I'm somewhere in the middle, maybe like that's what I mean. Like, okay, I sometimes act like an ass, I'm sometimes a good guy, I'm sometimes sometimes I mean, those aren't even real. Like, what is acting like an ass, except for what your interpretation of those events, what you assign to what you did, or what you assigned to how you acted. So, what is the self anyway? Is it just your thoughts, or is it what you are? Because in those scenarios where I feel like Sean K the asshole or Sean K the good guy, there's a part of me that's unchanged and consistent, and I think that's the observer that Buddhism talks about, or the Atman that Hinduism talks about. This sort of the higher self beyond the self, the divine within all of us, which is really just kind of freeing yourself from the ego and the lower, I guess the lower mentality, the lower, you know what I mean. The next relevant passage I'm going to read is actually from an ancient Chinese text known as the E Ching. And if you're unfamiliar with the I Ching, it's a little hard to explain. If it's an ancient Chinese text that you can ask questions to. And basically, when you ask the I Ching these questions, you cast coins, and then based on the coins that you cast them 6 times, and then based on like the combination of the heads and tails, there's lines you draw, and then the changing lines, and then the lines all form a different hexagram, and then the hexagram is like 61, 62, like, well, there's how many hexagrams are in the? There's about 65, 64 hexagrams in the I Ching, but I'll read it from Wikipedia what it says anyway. It's basically the I Ching is usually translated as the Book of Changes, or the Classics of Changes, and is an ancient Chinese divination text that is among the oldest of the Chinese classics. It was originally a divination manual in the Western Zhou period in 1000 to 750 BC. The I Ching was transformed over the course of warring states and early imperial, and in this course, ancient China, it's talk about early imperial periods 500 200 BC in a cosmological text with a series of philosophical commentaries known as the 10 Wings. After becoming part of the 5 classics in the 2nd century BC, the I Ching was a subject of scholarly commentary and the basis for divination practice for centuries across the Far East. Eventually, it took an influential role in Western understanding of East Asian philosophical thought. So anyway, my dad taught me all about the I Ching. I feel like me and him kind of have this similar connection to the spiritual world and this similar intuition about things, and like either me or him are subscribed to either a religion, but we've had experiences that were otherworldly or were divine. And he actually he kind of was the one to first tell me about Taoism, which I think is, out of all the religions, is the one that resonates with me the most. But anyway, he taught me about the I Ching and how to ask the questions of the I Ching, and he told me how it gave him accurate answers to questions. And it doesn't really work if you do a yes or no question. It's more works for an open-ended question, because and more comments on the situation rather than just answers a yes or no question. Actually, when my father took one of the first dates that my father took my mother on, he invited her over to his place to teach her the I Ching. And you know what? That's why I wanted to learn about the I Ching, because I thought, you know what, maybe I'll steal his idea for a date. Nah. I actually thought, I mean, that actually is a good idea, but like, I just wanted to, because I saw that like the answers he was getting to questions were accurate to it, and I sometimes have like a lot of anxiety about things, and I want some kind of answer to maybe things I can't get an answer to right away. But anyway, relating it back to what I was talking about, hexagram 61 in the I Ching is called Inner Truth. And the third changing line in that says, 6 in the third place means he finds a comrade. Now he beats the drum, now he stops. Now he sobs, now he sings. Here the source of a man's strength lies not in himself, but in his relation to other people. No matter how close to them he may be, if a center of gravity depends on them, he is internally tossed to and fro between joy and sorrow. Rejoicing in high heaven, then sad unto death, this is the fate of those who depend upon an inner accord with other persons whom they love. Here we have only the statement of the law that this is so. Whether this condition is felt to be an affliction or the supreme happiness of love is left to the subjective verdict of the person concerned. Now, I think it could either be an affliction, it could be a negative or positive, In some ways it's negative, some days it's positive. In some ways, if, your whole sense of self is dependent on whether people like you or what they think of you, then you're never going to be happy and you're never going to be consistent in who you are, because you're always going to be like, oh, these people think I'm weird, these people think I'm that. And you're not going to be you're not going to be being your authentic self. And ironically, through that, you're not going to be connecting with people as much, because people can only connect with you and form connections with you if you are vulnerable and you put out who you are. Because if you're not saying what you really feel, what you really think, if you're not really expressing yourself, if you're not expressing your own truth, how can anybody relate to you? How can anybody connect to you? And so I think it goes hand in hand. I think through having a deeper connection to yourself and being centered in yourself and having an inner core values, having an inner path, having a path you're on, a meaningful path that isn't dependent on what other people are doing. And, of course you want to be considerate of other people, but it's not about, pleasing them or what they'll think of me, because this is this is my mission. This is my meaningful my mission I'm meant to do here on earth. This is my passion. This is my message to the world. This is how I want to bring value to other people's lives. And what other people think about that or their disagreements, you could take it into consideration if they say something valid, but that doesn't really matter because you're on your own path. Another thing I just thought of is that a lot of the times when I'm thinking people think something negative about me, or I feel weird around or something like that, a lot of times it's because I'm in my head thinking, all this negative stuff. So it's of course, it's I'm just sitting there brooding. Some people are drawn to, there's this Jon Snow types that are the charming brooding man and the romantic brooding man who has the mysterious past. That I think that's actually attractive to. I know certain women find that attractive, that type, but usually it's just you're sitting there you have this frown, and I think that's when I'm thinking negative about myself, that's when I'm in a negative state of mind, that's when I have more negative reactions from other people. And when I'm engaged and I'm in the present and I'm having fun and I'm just joking and being jovial and just putting myself out. You don't have to be jovial all the fucking time. You don't have to be ha ha ha. So that's what I said. I don't think being happy all the time is a really reasonable goal, because I know I've been talking a while now, but the reason I thought that centering yourself was a good place to start was because it kind of relates to why I started this show. I know I said a bit this is more focused than BSing, but it runs deeper than that. I went through some things connected to the podcast that kind of shattered me for a while and put me in a pretty bad depression. And I just felt kind of dead inside, and I didn't really feel the spirit or drive for my old podcast BSing that was, for a while, was my higher purpose, was making me excited. I'm going to make newsletters about artists that people haven't heard about from different parts of the world, and maybe ones that are using art to advocate for a social cause in a different part of the world or here, or somebody with an interesting life story that's unique, and somebody that what I like to do is have a lot of people who are creating art from various different cultures and everything to kind of show the common humanity we all share. And most of them, I would say, were, I guess you could call them underground artists, or people who weren't really taking the commercial route with whatever they were creating, and they were they were creating art because that was inside of them. And I was showing how people from all different cultures and backgrounds and walks of life were doing that, and that no matter where they came from, that shared, or how different their art may be, or how different their life experiences may be. I feel like that creative energy, that need to create, kind of connected all of them. And of course, my show was a variety show. It wasn't just artists, like I said. Like I also went into geopolitics and other things because it was kind of a variety show. And I was really passionate about it. That passion kind of died. And I'm just going to tell a little bit of a story. Okay. So basically, I made a friend through the podcast. I interviewed her. I'm not going to say who it was. I actually took the episode down because eventually it just bothered me too much to, it just started to trigger a lot of things for me because on the outside, this experience would sound like a very small thing to a lot of people. But like I said before, at the end of the day, invalidating yourself doesn't help anything. Because if something's affecting me on a deep level, if it killed my spirit, if it killed my joy for something I really love doing, then it's obviously something worth exploring. So I had this friend that I met through the podcast. I won't mention who it was. But basically after the podcast, this person had worked as a social service worker. And they had been studying to be a psychologist. And I remember after the podcast, like we had a really good talk and everything. And I said that I had been I had stuff I was struggling with, like depression and a lot of negative self-talk and things I was working on that I really wanted to work with a therapist on. But I had a lot of bad experiences with therapists because a lot of the ones I went to were kind of egotistical and just kind of forced their own agenda. They didn't really listen. It was hard to find a good therapist. There's a lot of therapists, but like finding a good therapist is hard, and finding one that you can like schedule in, and because with your busy schedule, everything is hard too. It's not always easy to just get one or to find one that that takes your insurance, all that stuff. So she said that she could help me through being like a sounding board for my thoughts, a sounding board for whatever I was going through, and I could just talk to her whenever. And I was kind of worried about this from the start because, okay, this was a friend of mine. We had, we connected through the artistic things, and we had this. I was like, okay, I'll do this a little bit. Like she said, whenever you want me to go in counselor mode, just like talk to me. And I was a little bit worried about it from the start because I knew that my mind never shuts off. And I knew that I like if I just start sharing whatever's in my head, I knew eventually it would get to be too much. And I have OCD a bit and rumination, so I was going over like things that were bothering me throughout the day, things I was thinking about, and I was constantly messaging in the sounding board, and I was saying, hey, is this getting to be too much? And she'd always say, no, this is your safe space, Sean, this is your safe space. Eventually she introduced me to this other person through the internet that she thought me and her would hit it off, because I was talking to her a bit about my dating life and that I wasn't finding the right connection. And she introduced me to this person like hoping we'd be friends because we had a lot of similar creative interests and everything. And I remember I was really impressed by this person that she showed me. Like I saw interviews with her. I just thought she was very intelligent. She was creative. She was talented. And she seemed to have a good heart. Like she cared about certain causes. She was an animal lover. And I just thought there was something special about this person she introduced me to. And I really, really just had this strong need to connect to this person. And I feel like that's been something I was looking for a long time, was like somebody to have this important connection with, and that would kind of complete me or whatever. And I started really wanting to connect more with this person, and I guess maybe I focused too much on it because I wasn't centered enough. Like I had the BSing thing, and that was something this person was always helping with. Like, you're always focused on other people, what they think, or well, this person I'm dating, or this person I'm interested in, like, what will I get them to like me? And she'd always say like, hey, you should focus more on your own goals, focus on Sean, and everything else will fall into place. But I started getting really focused on this person. I started getting really focused on, I want this person to like me. She's so cool. She's so smart. She writes, she's like a filmmaker, she does all this cool stuff, and like that it's awesome that you think me and her would hit it off, and like that must mean I'm cool too, and like I really, but this person wasn't really quick to like we talked a bit, and then like she kind of didn't really talk to me that much like after that, and then I kept thinking like, oh, I want this person to talk to me more, I want this person to talk to me more, and I kept bothering this friend that introduced us about it, because I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't centered in myself. I was too much looking for this person's approval, and she said, not some people take time, it doesn't mean you'll necessarily won't connect now or anything like that, and I just couldn't let it go, and I wasn't focused enough. What I should have been focusing on all along was getting my podcast out to more people, being creative, getting my own life where I want to be at. And then I shouldn't have been making this person and getting this person's attention or getting this person's approval a focus. But I just really, I don't know. I wanted this person to think I was cool. I wanted this person to think I was interesting to talk to. And I felt like this person wasn't eager to connect with me right away or talk to me right away. And I kept wanting to change that. And I kept, like, they were going to be on my, like, we talked sometimes, and, like, they were going to be on my podcast because this person had told me they were shy to come on my show because they didn't like how their voice sounded. And that was another thing. I felt like this was someone I really wanted to connect with because I thought this person was amazing, and she had a lot of doubts about herself. She had a lot of insecurities about herself. So I thought, if I think this person is amazing, like, to me, this person seems amazing, and they have all these doubts about themselves, then I must be amazing too. I think me and her should really connect. I was thinking me and her should really connect more and kind of help each other with that. And I shouldn't have been impatient about it or needy about it, or but anyway, but then I kept talking to the friend like, oh, why, what do I do? Like, is there a way I could get her to, like, could I maybe, like, is there a way we could get to talking more? I really want to connect more with this person. And she was humoring it for a while, and eventually I just couldn't let it go. Like I said, oh, well, she doesn't like really respond to me that much. I think I just, I'm not good enough like for her to talk to. Like, I really thought she was amazing, and she doesn't want to talk to me, and like it was stupid. Like, I kept going on and on about it, and then eventually she got irritated that I kept going on about it. But the thing was, that's the thing I hate about the texting, is because, like, through texting, people don't always understand what you mean. Like, I was actually saying, you know what, maybe I'm focusing too much on her, and she thought I was just continuing, and she's like, you need to let this go. And she started to turn, because for a while she was kind of this nurturing mother figure to me, and I felt like, I don't know, she treated me like I was her. That was like what I felt about the connection, at least. Like, she was like a mother figure, and I kind of reverted to being like this, like, little kid with her that was always like seeking, like, oh, see, I did good, and then she'd say, I'm proud of you, and then like it was probably like a Freudian thing, like, with the whole thing, and I don't know, but anyway, it was I kept like, for some reason that day, like, she was aggravated with me because I kept bringing up how I wanted to connect with this person. This person didn't want to connect with me. Like, oh, why don't they want to connect with me? Oh, I'm not going to be able to ever have a connection with someone that amazing. And, like, I didn't see at the time. It's like, okay, so there's nothing amazing about being this needy, uncentered, impatient person. That neediness was something I really needed to work on. That neediness was always like, that happened many other times. I think there's this amazing person. I don't even really know them too well, but like then I'm like, oh, I want their attention. I want their approval. I want to connect more with them. Like, and my whole thing is like, I'm going to post this on Instagram because like, then they're going to like it. Like, oh, I got to like, dopamine rush. I got to like, and then it's like, oh, just looking for the like. But when you're on center like that, you're always looking for the next like, the next time somebody's going to approve of you, the next time. When really I should have just been treating this person like another person, and just kind of talking to her, taking her as, letting her come to me in her own time, and respecting that, maybe this person didn't want to connect with me, which would have been fine too, but like, people not everybody is just like, sometimes people, I think she had a point that like sometimes people go at their own pace, and like sometimes people don't let someone new in right away that quick. Maybe they like to take their time, and they slowly like to get to know someone. Or it because actually I went on a date with a girl recently who said something similar, and that kind of got me thinking about that as well. Like she said that because like before we went on the date, she was like, oh, like she was kind of like quiet and like only didn't text back too often. And then when we went on the date, she was like, oh, thanks for being patient with me. A lot of people give up and don't want to, don't go on the date with me or whatever because they think I'm not interested because I don't, I'm not responsive right away, or I take a while. But like me, I take a while to open up to people. I take like that was just something that got me thinking about it. That I'm not saying like necessarily this person like we would have connected or whatever, but like I'm just saying I think she had a point about how everybody goes at their own pace, and I wasn't thinking about like her, or like maybe this person has their own thing going on. Maybe that's why she's not as responsive, or maybe maybe it has nothing to do with me. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm uninteresting or I'm unworthy or I'm not a cool person to get to know. I should have just been focused on my own thing. But anyway, she got irritated with this, and but then I kept asking like, hey, are you mad? Like, are you irritated? And I wanted a reassurance that she still liked me, that this person, because this, I know it's confusing. I'm talking about two different people, but this friend of mine who was offered to be a sounding board and was giving me all this advice and being helpful to me, and really did help me see myself in a better light in a lot of ways. And she'd always say to me, Sean, you're a kind human being. Like, I always see you, and you've started BSing from nothing. You do all these cool things. Don't you see how amazing you are? And she'd say, you know, you, like, I've watched you like just beat up on yourself for so long. You're a kind person. And she knew a lot of like my quirkiness. Like I was sharing like my innermost thoughts, my innermost beings. I was being vulnerable. Um, but then this day she seemed kind of aggravated for me. Maybe some things were building up. I know she was busy or with like her studies, and I should have taken that into consideration. But I guess the way she interpreted it was that I didn't want to give her space to study. But that wasn't the case at all. I didn't understand what she meant. I didn't know she meant that she didn't want to study because like she didn't want to do the sounding board thing as much because she needed to study, like, or that I was she thought I didn't want respect, that she needed space to do her work for school. I just thought she was maybe mad about something I said regarding this friend, or I said something disrespectful for my mistake, and I was anxious about it and I wanted to make sure. But once I understood, she just couldn't talk as much, I was like, okay, I backed off. I did back off. And I thought, okay, I'll message her in a few weeks, because I was going to be on her podcast. And I kind of said a little thing, like I said, like, oh, I hope we're still friends, and I hope I'll still be on your podcast. I hope you still like me, like oversensitive. But it was like an annoying little kid, like seeking reassurance. But I think through the text, she took it like in a terrible way, that I'm like this terrible person who, and I don't know. But anyway, I was working on the newsletter, and I was writing about all the different experiences I've had talking to different people on my show, and it ended up being a good newsletter. But as I was working on the newsletter, and I was reaching out to this other person about doing it, out of nowhere, she just messages me with an angry, we're not doing the podcast. I'm not doing the podcast with you anymore. Like, please respect my wishes. I don't want to have to block you. And I'm like, wait, what just happened? And then next thing I knew, she's like, fuck you, I'm blocking you. And it's like, that was so traumatizing to me. And then like, I don't know, it just was such a shock, because it'd been days, we've been talking for a couple months, and she was helping me with a lot of things. She was always very understanding, and she knew sometimes with OCD, I seek reassurance, and I only do that like if I feel comfortable with the person, being vulnerable with them, and usually she just like reassure me but she just showed so much anger, and like it was like she hated me, and that really hurt. And like this is someone I had told my innermost thoughts to, and my innermost, um, and I didn't know. Like I thought she'd just say, "Sean, fuck off," or get irritated. I mean, you never know, but I just felt so hurt by it because it's one thing to have someone who doesn't really know you judge you or like treat you like a terrible person or like think the worst of you, but for someone you've been vulnerable with and you've shared personal things with, like, and you thought that this person understood you and they were on your side, and to just she didn't even like try to even consider that maybe she was taking me the wrong way or that I didn't even get a chance to like respond. She just like cut me off and just such an abrupt way, and it's just it was like she hated me, and it was just so I felt kind of betrayed that she offered this whole thing, and then I trusted her. I was trusting her, being vulnerable, and it wasn't like this was an ongoing thing where she had brought this up multiple times, and like and also like through text I couldn't read the tone, I couldn't read what was going on. I thought I didn't see where she was coming from. She didn't see where I was coming from. Basically, I don't think there's a good guy, bad guy, or any of that. I think it was just a misunderstanding because texting is a terrible form of communication. And I just hate that I was working on the newsletter. It broke my heart was like I was working on the newsletter and I was writing about them as my friend, like someone, like a conversation we had about how it's never too late to follow your dreams and don't compare yourself to other people. I was writing about her in the newsletter and I was so excited, like, and I actually reached out to her friend, the one that I was really like wanted to get to know, and I reached out to her about doing a newsletter because as I said, she was shy to come on my show, and I was really like, okay, now I'm focusing on my path. In a few weeks, I'll leave her alone to do her studies, and in a few weeks I'll do her show, and she's gonna see a whole new Sean, and and I'm getting really now I know what to focus on. Like I'm gonna do feature stories every month, like I was doing before, because I did do that a while with my podcast. Like I wrote a feature story on this open mic called Stark Reality Open Mic, and I did it on this punk rock DJ in New York, and I wanted to pursue it even more, and she just gave up on me as soon as I was starting to believe in myself, and that really hurt. And I was actually in the middle of having a conversation with this other person, the one that I wanted to impress, the one that she introduced me to. I was in the middle of a conversation with her when the mentor woman, the woman who was like the sounding board, blocked me, and she was saying, "Oh, like maybe I could do a podcast with the three of us, like me, our mutual friend, and her, so she'd feel less shy." And then I had to tell her what happened, and I was hoping like that maybe she would see my perspective, and of course she didn't know me anything, and she didn't really know me, so she kind of just ghosted me, and I just felt really bad that like it came to this because like I was hoping like maybe I could kind of mend the bridge through her or she'd listen to me, and but then a month went by and I was sending some people my screenplay, some friends, and this, as I said before, this person that she introduced me to that I wanted to get to know was a filmmaker and everything, and I sent her, so I decided, what, I'll email her my script. It's been a month. I'll email her my script. And the next day she blocked me too. And that hurt me even more, like, because I was thinking, this person I confided in must have said something to her. I told her in confidence. She must have, like, she said this was like only between me and her. And I just felt so terrible. And I felt guilty that like I came off the wrong way. And I just felt like I didn't want to do the podcast anymore. I was doing BSing a bit before that after the friend cut me off, but then once they both cut me off, I was like, fuck it. I don't want to even look at myself on the camera if this is the way they see me, if I came across as this terrible person. And I just felt so guilty about it, like, because it was just, I know I wasn't perfect, but like I think I really came off the wrong way, and I'm not, needy and patient. I wasn't centered, and I hope like maybe if they'll listen, like I'm sorry that I just if I don't know if either of them will end up listening to this show, but I just want to say I want to say to my friend that was a sounding board that I'm sorry if he felt I wasn't respecting your space when I was doing the checking, reassurance, and all that. Um, I had already backed off. I didn't know that. Like I had no idea that like I because I wasn't it was through text and that certainly was not the case that that I didn't respect that you needed space. That was a total misunderstanding. And I'm sorry that I didn't make that clear. Like I just wasn't clear in the communication, and I was trying to clarify some things, um, and I should have been more considerate, and I should have read the cues earlier, and I should have backed off sooner, and I'm sorry for that. And if you don't want to give me a second chance to not do that, that's fine. And I want to say to the mutual friend, the friend that she introduced me to, the one that I was hoping to connect with more. I'm sorry if I when you told me you were shy to come on my podcast, I just got the sense that you and me, we had similar things we were working on, and um, I just saw that we were both creative, we were both talented, but we both doubted ourselves a lot, and I thought that was something we could help each other with, and I just wanted to connect with you more and get to know you better. And I'm sorry if I went about it in a way that was disrespectful or immature or made you uncomfortable, but I'm not perfect, but I'm trying every day to be better, and I hope one day like we could all be cool again and you give me another chance. And so the reason why I bring this up is this really affected me on a deep level, and it led to me creating this new show because as much as I tried, I just couldn't feel the passion for BSing anymore. It just brought up too many negative thoughts and feelings about this, and even when I read about promoting a podcast, it said you could be a guest on somebody else's podcast, and that hurt too because I was about to be a guest on this friend's podcast, and I just felt so terrible about it that now she viewed me as shit, like, and that I just kept thinking, oh, if I could just go back to that day and say one thing different, like I'd be on her show, and then this other person would be on I'd be connected with both of them. It's like, oh, I don't like living in this fucking reality where I did this stupid thing, and now I'm like this person that, like, oh, now I had to live in this reality where I did this, and like I want to rewind, fuck this reality. I just felt so empty and I didn't feel any passion for anything. And I really was beating up on myself for a while till soon after this happened, I got a better job. I got in with this really good company where there's opportunity for growth. I started this new podcast, and it was a way to recreate myself because I saw through this experience where not being centered and where leaning on other people, and both of these two people. Okay, I had to the person that was a sounding board. I had to, like, I wasn't centered, so I needed somebody to constantly talk these thoughts out rather than work on them on my own, or be my own rock, be my own common sense. I should have been my own rock rather than leaning on this other person. And that could be a burden. You're always leaning on somebody, but this person that I wanted to impress, I wasn't centered, so I needed this person to validate me, and I needed this person to complete me, and I needed this connection with this person because I thought, oh, they're so cool, and like, rather than the focus should have been my own path, my own creative projects, my own podcast. What is it that Sean, like, I needed to be complete and whole in myself, and I'm finally getting there now. I just want to give another good book recommendation now. It's called The Power of Regret by Daniel H. Pink, and it's how looking backward moves us forward, and it gives a lot of good techniques about dealing with regret. And it says that wallowing in regret isn't good, and that's what I do a lot, but also not regretting at all and just being like, oh, I have no regrets is not good either, because then you don't learn from your mistakes. So I think the key is accepting your mistakes and thinking like, this is bad, I regret it, but then using that as a way to learn and improve. So maybe if I did go back to that day and did things differently, it's like I would have done something else stupid, and it wouldn't have been a wake up call to me that I need to be more centered. I need to be more whole of myself, and I wouldn't have started this new show that's more focused, and I think has like I want to occasionally still do BSing, but I really want to make this like my main project. Let's talk about the deep stuff, because it's more focused and it's just a new Sean. You know, like I wanted to erase that whole. I think that was the death of the old me, and this is the birth of the new me. Neville Goddard's talked about that sometimes, you know, the death of the old self and then the birth of the higher creator self. This is the higher creator self. And I do feel sad that this friend can't see that now I'm working on this book of prose and poetry that I've been writing for a while, that now I'm doing like this music project. I got in with this good company. I'm doing the show that has more concrete goals. I feel like if I met these two people now, like they'd like the good qualities that we initially connected on, or the good qualities that she thought I would connect with this. She said she knew we'd get along, me and this friend she introduced me to. I feel like more of that, like I'm starting to see more of those good qualities, and therefore it's coming out more. And I feel like because I was so focused on my flaws and so focused on the negative came out and destroyed my connection with these two people. At least for now, you know. I hope one day we could reconcile and be cool again. That'd be awesome, and maybe they could even be on the podcast. But if not, you know, I need to forgive myself and move on. It's just another thing with BSing was it was a variety show, and I feel like I need to get myself a little bit more known, maybe through this show, before I could do a successful variety show. Because BSing with Sean K, it's easy to do a variety show like when you're Mark Maron or you're Joe Rogan. People know who they are. You can bring on different guests and not really have a consistent theme, and you could call it something with your name in it because people know who you are from other mediums. Like people knew who Joe Rogan was because of the Fear Factor, but with me, it's like nobody really knows who Sean K is. I mean, I've done some acting, like small parts in some things, like reenactments here, but nobody knows who the fuck I am. But so I would need to be known to have a successful variety show. Like, let's talk about the deep stuff. A lot of people are interested in deep conversations, so I think that this has more potential. And anyway, this is just the beginning of this new journey, and I feel like I'm finally getting into a good place. And this is just part one of the 3-episode premiere. I know I'm premiering 3 episodes at once. Usually in my shows, I won't talk this much because I have a guest and I have like a journalistic side as well. This is sort of my improv stand-up comedy side. I haven't really done stand-up. It's something I've been wanting to explore, but you know, this is my stand-up because like I've been telling jokes and everything, and it kind of it's, you know, you get more people to listen through this way than you do through so you just like go into a comedy club or whatever. But it's not like a main pursuit of mine. It's something I might try for fun. Like the podcasting and also voice acting, voiceover, probably the 2 main creative passions I'd be with. But I'd say the podcasting is number 1. And you know, some people will listen to this, and like I said, it sounds minor in the scale of things. Some people will be like, oh, fuck you, Sean. Like, you don't know about pain. You want to know about real pain? I'm going to punch that Sean K guy in the face. He doesn't know anything about pain. And, you know, that's valid. You know, if you've grown up in a war-torn country or gone through real things, like, you know, I have a lot to be grateful for. And I do try to write a gratitude list and be grateful for everything. And your feelings are valid. Like, I can understand feeling that way in your shoes. But at the same time, this is something that deeply affected me. And just simply brushing it off didn't really help me. It's something I needed to work through and understand. And, of course, then there'll be other people being like, that's valid, man. Your feelings are valid, man. I understand you, man. Valid. And that's, you know, that's valid, too. But I wrote this on Instagram, and I just wanted to read this now. Soon after this happened, as a way to kind of heal myself and maybe help others. I said, I'm learning to accept that sometimes I make mistakes. Sometimes misunderstandings happen or I hurt people unintentionally. But I can't dwell on the past. Life goes on and it is about growing and learning. We are all works in progress. It's how you use your mistakes to improve and get better that counts. I've learned that being kind to myself is harder often than being kind to others. But you can't truly have compassion for others until you have compassion for yourself. I need to remind myself that I'm okay. Shit happens. I learn from it, and that's what counts. Others might not always forgive you or understand you, but you have to forgive and accept yourself and also work towards being the person you want to be and you know you're capable of being. And now, at the time when I wrote that, I was still beating up on myself, which I think is a very Jewish thing to do because, my mother's Jewish, not my dad. I know I have the German last name, and I say that, my dad's mainly German, my mother's Jewish, and they're like, oh, that must be very awkward dinner conversations, but we just had this way of, self-flagellating and torturing ourselves, and, Jesus was Jewish, right? And he didn't just die for people's sins, right? He had to, die in the most horrible way for people's sins. He had to, be tortured and put on a cross and everything for people's sins, because, it wasn't enough to just die for people's sins. That he had to suffer for people's sins, too, because, that's just a very Jewish thing to do, isn't it? But I'm done beating up on myself, and, I'm starting to feel more compassion for myself because, like I said, I screwed up, but I apologize. I self-reflected, and it's not their job to forgive me or give me a second chance, but I need to give myself a second chance. I hope we do reconnect, like I said, though. And that's what happens when you're not centered, is things like that. You can't really have connections with people. Things work out better if you're just focused on yourself. Everything else falls into place, and that's what I'm finally learning. And I want to read one Bill Hicks quote. All matter is merely energy condensed into a slow vibration. We are all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. There is no such thing as death. Life is only a dream, and we're the imagination of ourselves. You are the imagination of yourself, motherfucker. Make those thoughts about yourself good. Empower yourself, also be self-aware and knowledgeable about your flaws, but keep moving, keep being better, because there is no rewinding and going back in time. All you can do is move forward, trust the spiritual journey, and manifest that shit, motherfucker. And there will be 2 more episodes premiering at the same time, so listen to those as well. I know it'll be very different from this one, because this one I'm just talking and talking and talking. I do more listening to the other 2. That's something I've always tried to find, is a balance of being conversational when I have a guest, and also listening and making it a good interview and bringing out the other person as much. Just finding that balance between talking too much and talking too little, which I feel like I fall into the 2 extremes of. But I'm slowly finding that balance. Anyway, if you want to keep it updated with future episodes, subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Also be on YouTube as well. And follow me on social media. Let's talk about the deep stuff. You can even reach out to my personal account. That's SKNEESE1989. And I'll post other creative projects as well as a podcast on there. And you'll just see what I'm up to. I'm always open to talking to people, and I'm a very open person, so feel free to reach out. And if you want to donate, I'm on Venmo as SEAN, and there's a little dash, KNEESE, and SKNEESE1989 is my PayPal. SKNEESE1989 at gmail.com is my PayPal. And also, Zelle is the same thing, my email address. I do need to get this laptop screen fixed, so if you could donate, that'd be great. That could be some extra money towards getting this fixed. And because right now I'm using an external monitor, which makes it a little bit difficult to do this podcast or record. I'm going to have some of my friends watch the screen as I interview people for now. But anyway, I hope you enjoy the other 2 episodes I released, and continue to join me on this spiritual journey, because life is always spiritual, isn't it? It's because we're all on the spiritual journey. And that's about it.